Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Steve Boblis, and I'm an advisor with the Retirement Group. This webinar is part of our online class library for Kaiser Permanente employees. Now, I should say the Retirement Group is not associated with Kaiser nor with Fidelity or Vanguard, for that matter. We're a separate independent financial advisory firm. But what we do is, for the past 30 years, we've been helping individuals, corporate employees, prepare for retirement, transition into retirement, and then ultimately reach their retirement goals. That's what we help folks to do. So as we're going to be talking today about a subject that's involving retirement, and that's about the emotional decisions involved in retirement. Now, when we talk about the emotional decisions, of course, there's an emotional decision when it's time to retire. That's a big thing. It's a change in your life when you decide to retire. But the other part of it that goes beyond that is some of the additional decisions that you make, the decisions you make about your money and how they will affect your retirement. And the reason we say that is, look at this chart. This is typical of what the market does now, has been doing, and will continue to do in the future, no doubt. The market goes up, the market goes down. When you're first starting out and you're young and you're putting money into your 401k or your 403b, whichever it might be, you're watching money, you invest it aggressively, the market goes up and down, makes never mind to you because you know that you plan on working for a long time still. But that starts to change in your mindset as you get closer to retirement. Drops like we had back in 07, 08, or even earlier this year can cause a lot of angst when this money that you've put aside is going to be the money for your retirement. It's going to provide your retirement income. But there's another part to that too. If you take a look at the bottom, notice the emotions that go along with the market as it moves. So let's ask this question. When is the best time to invest? Well, of course, a lot of answers maybe to that question, but let's go with an old axiom. You want to buy low and sell high. So looking at this chart, when's the best time to buy? Well, if you look over on the left, when the market is going down or maybe just starts to go up, that would seem to be the best time. But what are the emotions at that time for most folks? Uncertainty. People are a little dicey when they think about investing as the market is going down. And even when it turns and starts going up, there's interest, but everyone wants to wait a little bit. You notice as the market gets higher and higher, excitement and then greed. And that's when we find a lot of folks really want to be invested in the market. It's going up. It's always going to go up. I'm going to make a ton of money. So they invest. And then what happens, as it always does, is the market peaks and it starts to move down. And then the doubt and the fear start to set in. And then many times individuals will sell. Buying high and selling low, that's not going to work. That does not help you reach your retirement goals. And that's why this is an important subject to consider, to think about the emotions that are involved, how they affect you and how they affect your money, the decisions you make about your money. That's one of the reasons that many individuals we talk to choose to use an advisor, whether it's the Retirement Group or another firm, because they want someone else that's not part of them. They want someone, an outside influence perhaps, to help keep them calm because they know that these kind of times are going to arise. Well, we're going to talk about it a little bit today because there's been a lot of books written, a lot of things put out regarding how individuals work with their money, and that's what we're going to talk about. It comes down to, actually, we start by talking about the theories of finance, the standard theory and the behavioral theory. The standard theory, you could say this is what's taught in school, the numbers, and that is that you and I, we're rational. When we're going to make a decision, especially a financial decision, we gather all of our information, we analyze it, make sure we have all the facts, and then we make a good choice. In regards to the markets, well, you can't really control the markets. So what they recognize is then that the market tells us where things are at. When I look at the price of a stock for a company, that stock price tells me where everything, all the information known about that company is all included in that current stock price. So it's representative of the true value. But now when we talk about the behavioral theory, this isn't in place of, it's more of an overlay to the standard theory. So in regards to us as individuals, it says that sometimes we're not totally rational. Sometimes we make decisions based on imperfect information, or we don't take the time to gather all of the information, or We follow our gut, or we feel a certain way about it, and that's why we make decisions. In regards to the market, the behavioral theorists will say, of course, yes, it may be difficult to beat the market in the long term, but in the short term, there might be some things that we can take advantage, some anomalies that occur in the market. But today, as we look at this and correlate it to retirement, we're going to be talking about investor behavior, what we do. And the reason this is beneficial is because if we understand it and we understand the thought process that goes into some of these decisions, we're going to better understand the best day to retire. We're going to understand our investments a little bit more, make us or help us stay the course so that we can reach our retirement goals, reach our financial goals. So overall, going to improve our investment experience. When we talk about this idea of behavioral finance, it actually started a number of years ago. A Nobel Prize was won by a man by the name of Daniel Kahneman, and his thoughts on this and the work that he did spawned an entire industry of behavioral finance. There's just a ton of books that you can read that talk about this. But we're going to go through just a few basic things today to give you an idea of how this idea about emotions can affect the decisions we make about money, and ultimately then how it can affect our retirement. You notice a few of them here. We won't cover all of them, but we will talk about a few. And then, of course, at another time, we can discuss more if you like. So let's talk about this first one, diversification. Everyone's aware of diversification. That's a great thing, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, we find many times, or what Mr. Kahneman found in his study, is that individuals many times would allocate their portfolio based on what was available to them. So this is an example of 3 plans. TIAA, which is a organization for teachers, TWA pilots, that tells you this was a little bit ago, and the University of California. But notice the makeup of their plans that they have available, their investment savings plans for their employees, number of stock funds, number of fixed income funds. Well, what's interesting is when they looked at how people invested, notice with TIAA, people put their money 50-50. And with the other 2, they weighted the majority of the portfolio toward that end where they had more options. Well, what this is saying is that many times people will make their investment choices based on what choices they have. So if you've got 5 choices and you divide your money up 20% into each, well, I'm properly diversified, right? Well, maybe not really. You need to look at it a little bit more, and that's why we call it naive diversification. Really, you want to make sure you're properly diversified. That means taking into account your circumstances, your age, how long before retirement, your risk tolerance, all of those things should go into play in determining how your allocation is set up. And we help many folks with this, even prior to retirement, working with your 401k, your 403b. We're happy to take a look at it and give you some ideas as to your situation and how you might be structured. But the point is, don't let your investment options dictate your asset allocation. That simply means make sure that your asset allocation is appropriate for you and your circumstances, not just based on the number of choices that you have. Let's go to another one, herding. Well, doesn't sound good, what everyone thinks it might be, following the crowd. He found that this happened many times. People would follow the crowd, not just in regards to investment decisions, but even in regards to retirement. I've seen this through the years. I'll talk to individuals and talk to them about their retirement. Yeah, well, my friend, we started at the same time with the company and they're retiring, so I figure it's time for me to retire too. That's not the way you want to make your retirement decisions. There's a lot more that goes into play. But let's talk about it specifically in regards to money. Notice it talks about there that investors follow the herd in regards to investing in 4- and 5-star rated mutual funds. Now, are we saying that 4- and 5-star rated mutual funds are bad? No, not at all. But what we have to remember about those ratings is that those ratings are based on what they have done. Because of their performance, that's what puts them in that position. But that doesn't have anything to do necessarily with what's going to happen to them down the road. It has no predictive value. And that's obvious because we can look at a history of those funds that have been top rated every year. And notice in the little box of funds with a 5-star rating 3 years later, only 14% had performed at a 5-star level. Now, it just tells us we need to be a little bit more aware of our portfolio and what's going on. We can't just follow the herd where all the money seems to be going at the time. And that's kind of what we see with this. Large amounts of money flow into the market when the market is doing well. But what did we just talk about a little bit ago on one of our earlier slides? That's what happens is people wait until the market's doing well, and then they put more and more money in, but the market peaks and go down, and they wind up buying high and selling low. That's not what we wanted to do. That's not a good investment philosophy. That's not the way to have the kind of retirement that you want. So that's why herding is one we need to watch for. We don't make our decisions based on what other people are doing. We do make our decisions based on what's right for us in our circumstance. Another one we'll take a look at is in regards to the media. Now, I'm sure you would agree you are bombarded by the media today. Online, on your phone, on your home computer, work computer perhaps. We're totally bombarded with information. But when we talk about financial information, what we see many times is that the information is conflicting. Look at these few headlines that were pulled. On the left, negative comments about the market. On the right, positive comments about the market. But notice the dates. They're within just a few days of each other. Did the market make huge swings just within a few days? No. They report on things differently, sometimes even in the same magazine or the same newspaper. Another example, take a look at comments made about Apple stock. Apple's a wonderful company. But look on the left, we see some negative comments about things that have happened in the past or were happening at the time in regards to their earnings and their performance. And on the right, positive comments, again, taking place just within a few days of each other or a couple of weeks of each other. So how do you sift through all this and make your decisions? We advise that you stick with a long-term investment strategy. And again, that's why many folks decide to work with an advisor, to lay out a strategy and have someone that will help them stick to it. Really, turn off your television or your computer when it comes to talking about the financial news. It's not that we don't want to be informed about what's going on. No, we certainly don't mean that. But don't feel like you have to react to every little bit of news that comes along. Because what happens is when we feel like we have to react to everything that's going on, we're always tweaking our portfolio. That sets us up to make some decisions that might not be good or might not be in our best long-term interest. And again, think about what we're dealing with here. As you're getting closer to retirement, you need to look at your money a little bit different than you might have when you were 20 or 30 years old. Now, you need to make decisions based on your immediate future and then looking out into retirement. We want those decisions to be sound financial decisions. Let's look at another one, loss aversion. Well, that of course makes sense. Everyone has an aversion to losses. We never want to lose any money. But let's illustrate it this way. We're going to flip a coin. Heads, you're going to lose $10,000. Tails, you're going to win. So now the question is, how much do we need to put on the table for you to win when it comes up tails before you take this bet? Would you take it for $10,000, meaning heads, you lose 10,000, tails, you win 10,000? Would you make that bet? Probably not. Most people wouldn't. And that's what he found is that most people have they want to gain 2 to 2.5 times as much as they put at risk. So they want to win $20,000 to $25,000 before they'd be willing to risk $10,000 because they don't want to lose money. Now you might say, well, Steve, that makes total sense. Of course, I'd much rather win than lose money. But here's where it comes into play. Sometimes it causes us to hold on to something too long. Sometimes we do experience a loss and we have to cut our losses. We need to be aware of this in regards to making decisions. Don't hold on so long and so hard because we so much want to avert a loss that we end up causing ourselves a bigger financial problem. That's what we want to avoid. Well, those are just a few of the things that Mr. Kahneman found in his study. There's more, of course, that goes into it, some of those other traits that we looked at a little bit earlier. But the idea is you need to keep in mind your money. You need to be actively concerned about it. And I don't mean that you need to check your 401k or your 403b every day. I don't mean that. But it does mean you have to give some thought to it, particularly as you're approaching retirement. You need to think about what you're trying to accomplish, what your money is going to be doing for you, and help that affect your decisions that you make. When we talk about some of these traits, it's not to say that all of these traits are necessarily bad. In all honesty, we probably all have some of those traits to some degree within us. So it isn't so much that it's bad, it's that we need to recognize that. We want to make sure that as we start looking at our money and we make financial decisions, we make them based on sound principles, that we think about where we're at, what needs to be done, not just because other people are doing it, not because we have a particular mindset or something, but make good, sound financial decisions. What that's going to do is that's going to help us in regards to our retirement. So as we talk about this subject, perhaps you have some questions, feel free to give us a call. You can talk to myself or one of our advisors that might be closer to you. We have advisors across the country, actually. The phone number for our office is 800-900-5867. You can email a question at info@theretirementgroup.com. The blog that's mentioned there has some nice articles that you might like to read just about the economy, the market in general. The reason we do this is part of an education process. We're trying to help folks prepare for retirement. And we hope this information helps you give some thought to your situation. If you decide you want to consult with us a little bit and have us give you some input in your situation, of course, we're happy to do that. We know that what you really want is to have a happy, successful retirement, and we want to help you get there. Thank you for joining us today.